Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Diaries of Space Explorers. I am your host, Gavin Tolometti. I'm a PhD student at the University of Western Ontario, and I've been wanting to start this initiative for a while to bridge the gap between the space industry and the general public. I want to be able to highlight the importance of space exploration and what it has brought back to us on Earth and benefited our everyday lives. I will be speaking to scientists, engineers, educators, and artists who are involved in space exploration to understand their journey of how they found their passion for space and why they believe that space exploration will be able to help advance humanity forward. In this episode, we speak to Dr. Hannah Sargeant, a post-doctoral researcher from the Open University in the United Kingdom. Hannah and I actually met at the Lunar and Planetary Institute Graduate Intern Program in 2018, where I got to learn about her work trying to extract water from rocks on the moon. So without further ado, let's get right into the episode. I just want to quickly say thank you for wanting to be a guest on this. I've been wanting to do this initiative for a while, but just finally had the courage to start it.
No, I think it's really cool, and thank you very much for asking. I think, and I like the idea of just being able to chat about space because it's literally what we do and it's what we love. So now we just get other people to listen to us chat about space.
Yeah, I think what I noticed a lot recently when it comes to space podcasts that they focus so much on the details and the nitty-gritty of missions and research that they forget to try and to the best of their ability, broaden what the importance of some of this work is. And I think that's where they start to lose not necessarily the interest, but the attention of everyone who's outside the space industry, which in all reality, we kind of actually depend on them because usually they're the ones that decide whether or not we should be granted funding or not to actually do a lot of this research.
Exactly, yeah. And it's just kind of having that human element to what we do. You know, scientists are not like these Einstein, frizzy hair, white lab coat engineer astronauts. They are humans with their flaws and so on. And yeah, I think it's nice to show that side of people.
Yeah, it's a side of people I really think that should be highlighted just as much as their own work, because the work is what does define them in their academic or professional stature. But at the same time, they still have interests, they still have passion, reasons for why they love space so much and want to see space exploration advance more than what it is today. So yeah. I think that sometimes gets lost. And I think that's really what I want to try and highlight to make sure that everyone, no matter where you are in the space industry or in space exploration missions or research, that there is a reason why all these people are working, all these different projects, and why they believe it's definitely important and how it can benefit everyone back on Earth, which I think a lot of people don't know.
Exactly, and every now and then I kind of have this existential crisis of, I think I'm doing something important, and then I think, hold on, why do we care so much? And then actually, no, there are so many reasons why what we do has relevance to others. And actually go back and kind of, I took a step back and just to think about it before I came onto this to try and think about, how do I feel about its impact on everyone else? And it was kind of nice to feel like, oh no, there are good things and it is positive. Just that self-reassurance of, I can stay in this job and feel good about it. It's okay.
Yeah, it's just that extra spark of motivation and inspiration to remind you, because I think everyone sometimes forgets when they think about why is it I'm doing this, and you remember, oh wait, yes, this is why the overall goal is what I want to do, and this is why I think it's very important, not just for myself, but for everyone else that's outside of the space industry. So I guess I wanted to quickly take a step back, like way back to, since this is known as the Diaries of Space Explorers, we will be filling out this diary chapter by chapter. And I guess we want to start from the beginning. So what is it that brought you into space exploration? Like, what is it that got your attention into saying, you know what, this is what I want to do as a career?
I think there's two kind of aspects to that, because there's like the interest in space, and then there's the moment where I thought I could actually have a career in it. Because as a kid, especially in the UK, we don't have NASA on our doorstep, and all of these things that make us think, oh, that's something I could do one day. Space exploration was something I saw from a distance and I thought was really cool, but I didn't think it was something I could ever do. So as a kid, I mean, I've always been interested in science and asking questions all the time. And I was quite lucky to see a space shuttle launch in Florida when I was a teen. We went on a family holiday and just happened to be there at the right place at the right time. And that was amazing. And I remember seeing mission control and thinking, like, I'd love to have that job. I'd love to be able to work at mission control. I asked my mum afterwards, like recently, and she was like, I remember when you said that, and thinking, there's no way you're going to work at mission control. I'm not going to tell you that, but like, that's crazy. Who does that? It turns out, as a foreign national, I could never work at mission control in America, because I'm not American. But there are so many other things that you can do, and I continued to do science and physics as I got older, and actually I wanted to do a master's degree, and I wasn't really sure. I wanted to do my master's degree for me, not because I needed it for my job, because I'd already trained and worked as a teacher. So I thought, I've got a career if I need it, so great. I want to go and do my master's for me. And that's when I came across different space courses of different like areas of interest, and I saw space exploration systems, which was like all of planetary science, space science, astronautics, which is the calculation of like all of the astrodynamics, which is all of the calculating the orbits of stuff, and just everything, and engineering and all sorts. And I just loved it all. And I thought, okay, I want to do something with this. And that's when I started looking at where I could take that course and what I could do next. And then I ended up doing my PhD, again, a labour of love, in space resources, and the idea of using resources in space to support missions, to go further and deeper into the solar system and beyond. And now I'm just trying to keep going and holding on for as long as I can in this career until no one will pay me to do it anymore. So still love it.
It's quite fascinating. Like, you just getting to see, going back when you said you were in a teen, get to see that shuttle launch, and then looking inside the mission control where all the communications from the crew on the space shuttle back down to it would be the Kennedy Space Center, I would assume.
Yeah.
So I guess after you get to see all that, it kind of just like opens your eyes to, oh, actually, there's so much more you can do in space exploration than just seeing people build rockets. Because I think as kids, that's usually what we saw a lot of when it came to space, just seeing different rockets being built and send up to space, and then they come crashing back down safely into the ocean. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, you see the astronauts, and it's all about the crew, and it's all about the rockets. But I remember, Apollo 13, one of the greatest stories ever. And I remember watching that film as a kid, and when things go wrong and they need to create the carbon dioxide scrubber to filter the air in their environment, and they got the engineers on the ground, put them in a room with a bunch of stuff that's on board, and they said, right, find a way to make a round peg fit into a square hole. And I thought, I love that getting people to the moon was as included answering questions with duct tape and plastic bags and socks and all these things. And that really, like, it blew my mind that I think that's probably when I realized, oh, I could probably do that, because it was just like, it's a puzzle, it's figuring things out, it's and that's kind of when I realized I want to do that. That's something I can do. And then again, didn't really think anything of it at the time, just that would be really cool. And now I'm actually trying to do that, and effectively that's what is in the lab. It's just trial and error, putting a few random stuff together and hoping it works, and sometimes it does, and that's when you get to write a paper.
I remember that scene from it was from the movie Apollo 13, and I think when I was very young, I thought that wasn't true. I thought, like, now there's no way they told those engineers to make something a square fit into a circular insert. But then I think afterwards I got older, realized, wait, that was actually true. And at the time as well, I mean, I think it just showed that even though it was to help these astronauts, one, survive and get back home, as you said, it did show that there are problem-solving skills that you need that can't just be put towards a space mission. Like, these problem-solving skills can be put towards any career that could be on Earth. Like, say you're isolated on an oil rig, or you're doing field work in the middle of the Serengeti. I'm just throwing an example out there.
Yeah.
Or middle of the Antarctic, and all you have is duct tape to fix something. So, yeah, it does show that it's not just everything that you learn is not just applied towards space and getting a mission to its destination. It does have benefits that you can apply elsewhere, and it has been applied elsewhere. I think there's a lot of skilled workers that have come from the space agency that now work on Earth from it. So I'm guessing Apollo 13, was that one of your most favorite movies growing up?
I have like different sci-fi films that draw on like different things that I love. So I love Apollo 13, one, because it's so accurate to the story. I mean, do you remember, so because we worked together at LPI, at the Lunar and Planetary Institute, and they had hardback books of all of the transcripts from all of the missions, and they have the Apollo 13 book, and you can literally go to the page when everything went wrong, and when it says, Houston, we've had a problem. Yeah, that was quite cool to kind of see that. That was definitely like throwback to childhood moment when we got access to that library. But yeah, I would say Apollo 13 is up there, and I really like, there's quite a few. I really like Interstellar, and I really love The Martian. And I love The Martian because it could be true. It's everything about it has been researched so thoroughly. Like the author of the book, I forgot what's his name. Do you remember? I should know this.
Oh, I should know this as well.
I've got his other book. I've got his other book next door. Yeah, so he researched it so well that everything was really accurate, and it just so turned out that that film came out the year of my master's, and our master's project was a group project to design the infrastructure to send a mission to Mars for a few weeks and then return them home, which was effectively what The Martian was. So everything was about The Martian, and like I think our password was Matt Damon, because we were just following his guidance for that semester. But yeah, they're some of my all-time favorites.
No, I remember seeing The Martian in cinema, and I knew that they tried to make it as accurate as possible. I know they tried to exaggerate quite a few things just to make it an entertaining movie, but I think it definitely did, hopefully maybe inspired the younger generation to think, like, I might be able to do exactly what he's doing because it's not too real, but maybe I can get to where he is, so where we could get people on Mars. Because I have a feeling that for our generation, we'll probably help put people on Mars, but we might not be the generation that steps foot on Mars, I don't think.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think, and I realize I'm completely at peace with that. I love the idea that, okay, it's not necessarily going to be us or our peers, but if we can contribute, one brick to that road to getting humans on Mars, that is enough. I don't need to be the person planting the flag. I just want to be part of the story that gets us there, kind of thing, and that's exciting. But I'd like to think that some of the kids who are alive today will be witnessing, or could be one of those people sort of on Mars. That would be insane.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to like look back, seeing like when they announced the first group of astronauts sent for Mars. Maybe you look at one of the names, go like, hold on, that name looks very familiar, and maybe it was like a kid that you maybe met at an event or something. You think like, oh, I remember that person now. It's like, oh, how times have changed.
I know. I really love how reaching a certain point in what we do, and mixing in the circles at conferences and so on, all the projects or internships that we're involved in, there are people who are genuinely applying to be in the astronaut program who are our friends, and that's I find that really weird. It's finally it's not just like these heroes up on a pedestal that we just kind of admire from a distance. It's suddenly our peers are genuinely applying to be like someone I know, a friend of mine, could be in space, and like that's insane.
Yeah, no, that's always an insane thought, thinking you could always go around saying like, yeah, a friend of mine is living in space right now. I mean, no biggie.
Yeah, imagine that.
But going back, when you mentioned when you went from your master's and then to your PhD, you were looking at lunar resources and how they could be used for deep space exploration. So then I'm assuming so we would no longer have to rely on sending vast amount of resources on Earth, which can cost, I'm assuming, like hundreds of thousands of dollars just to send up to low Earth orbit, and I can't imagine how much it would probably cost to send them to the moon.
Yeah, exactly. The amount of supplies that we would need from Earth would just, I mean, I don't have numbers, but I know that if we wanted to send humans indefinitely or on, you know, multiple months or year-long missions, we just can't launch those amount of supplies into space from Earth. And also it's kind of this, it's also, I guess, this philosophical step, I don't know if that's the right phrasing, of being independent of the resources of Earth and being a truly interplanetary civilization. You know, we don't want to, well, we can go and explore and come back home again, but it's in our nature to explore and live. We're always looking at the next place to kind of have humans. That's what we've done across the globe. And as our civilization continues to grow and expand, we will inevitably have to take that next step and live away from Earth, and that involves using resources elsewhere. I mean, that is way down in the future, but it's starting somewhere, and now is when it's all happening. So we're trying to find water on the moon. I mean, there's loads of resources you can use, but water is kind of the first, like, I would say, in my biased opinion, the most useful resource that we will need, because it will give you water for the crew to drink, to grow plants, animals perhaps. You've got the oxygen in the water because it's H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. So you've got the oxygen to breathe, and then hydrogen and oxygen are also rocket propellant. So that can, if you go to the moon, you can generate the supplies that you need to then launch yourself back home again. But the benefit, like one of the biggest potential benefits of having propellant that we make on the moon, is that we could launch a lot of our missions deeper into space from the moon. So it takes a massive rocket, this rocket, the Saturn V, in fact, to get humans from Earth to the moon. But it only took the lunar lander, it was like this tiny module that could then launch us back home again, because the gravity is so much less on the moon. So if we can launch our missions from the moon, we can use much smaller rockets, which is a lot cheaper. So yeah, the idea of creating rocket propellant on the moon and having the moon as this pit stop where we launch all of our supplies or missions or whatever from there, we could then head onwards to Mars. And yeah, the moon could kind of be this way station one day, not in my generation, but that's what I'm hoping to kind of contribute to.
I'm just trying to picture, like, maybe way down the future when they're going to start marketing water that's made from material on the moon. I'm just trying to picture, like, how that could be advertised when they're trying to say, like, it's like Earth water, that's in the past. Now here, get some crystal clear, right from the soil, moon water.
Yeah, it's I'm sure there's a slogan. I'm not creative enough to come up with a cool slogan. But yeah, there's definitely something out there. I mean, I was able to make water from some Apollo soils, which was so much. I loved everything that I was doing in the lab that week. So I'm literally handling Apollo soils, but we didn't have the capacity at the time to collect that water. We're talking tiny amounts here, like microliters, like tiny amounts. It wouldn't even be a drop of water. But I was just vacuuming it, venting it out to the room, because at the time I didn't have a way to collect it. So it's weird to think I made moon water, but then I just released it into the air, maybe breathed it in.
So there's a chance that you may have actually consumed some moon water during your experiments.
Perhaps.
So in theory, you could say you might be one of the first people to drink water from the moon. In that case,
very, very tenuously, yeah. But that's what I want to do next. Is to be able to work on either in my own research or contribute to missions in terms of what I've learned so far. But the idea of creating tangible amounts of water, like I've come home with a bottle of water from the moon that was created. So for those that don't know much about water on the moon, which a lot of people don't know about water on the moon, so you can either get water from the ice. So there's ice in the polar regions. So we're trying to find ways to access that, but they're really hard to access. They're in really dark, cold craters with very steep walls. Or you can literally make it from dry rocks and soil using chemical reactions. So there are two different ways to do it. but either way is useful. So we're looking at both because it depends what sort of mission you're doing and what technology you have. So there's no right way. It just depends on other things that are involved in the mission.
Yeah, I think it's good that you said that, because I think there's still the occasional mishap or hiccup when it comes to the media, especially when it comes to saying, like, we've discovered water ice or potential for extracting the molecular water off the moon. I think there's still the occasional, I don't want to say event, but almost like a situation where someone accidentally makes it sound like there's liquid water on the moon, which isn't true, because it doesn't have an atmosphere to maintain it, and it's not got the right conditions. It's way too hot during the day, and it's way too freezing cold when it's under shadow. So I think definitely, probably, maybe there's probably ice in there, and there's definitely all that water you said trapped in some minerals in the soil, which I think a lot. Or is that more of a?
That's interesting. So this is me not being clear enough, actually. So the chemical reactions is literally taking hydrogen either with you or using hydrogen on the moon, because there's hydrogen. It's literally a proton, and that's constantly being brought to the moon from the sun, from the solar wind. So there's hydrogen all over the moon that we could potentially collect. And then what we're trying to do is extract the oxygen from the minerals. So there's no water in there, or not meaningfully anyway. So we're trying to take the oxygen out, and then we can either just use the oxygen or bind it with hydrogen to make water. So we're not talking about what we call hydrated minerals at this time.
Okay, no, that's actually very interesting, because I think it's something that everyone should be aware of when we say that we're trying to find this material on the moon, that we're not, it's not like hunting for water on Earth where we could just walk outside and go like, oh, there's a puddle right there.
Yeah, I literally say we're either finding water when it comes to ice, or we're finding water ice, or we're making water, because it's not there. We're creating it from literally the elemental things that are there.
Yeah, okay, that's very good. So one thing I actually wanted to ask, though, is, like, on your journey from when you got to your PhD and started looking at lunar resources, what is it that really made you want to go towards lunar resources? Because it's becoming a much bigger topic now, especially the past decade, I think, when it came to, like, detecting signatures on the moon. And now you were running experiments for your PhD, and it sounds like you were actually quite successful. You inhaled the water, potentially. But what is it that made you look at that type of research and think, you know what, I think this is going to be very good, not just for space exploration, but it'll be interesting to see how we could maybe, maybe you could think, like, if we design these machines to get water off the moon, maybe we could use this technology also on Earth in locations maybe where water is quite absent, say maybe deserts?
Good question. So it was actually during my master's, when we were doing the whole Matt Damon thing, mission to Mars, and using space resources was part of our design. So using resources on Mars to create oxygen to help support the crew to breathe. So that's where I was kind of introduced to the idea, but it's very abstract. There was some experiments done a few decades ago looking at making water from the soils, and then in the recent years we've learned about this water ice, which was really exciting for resources, but I'd never seen any projects or anything about it. I'd never seen any research groups, not in the UK. No one was doing lunar resources. In the US there's a few, so I started my PhD in 2016. And I came across this one project at the Open University, and it's part of this instrument called Prosper, which is going to fly on the Lunar 27 lander on the moon. And they're going to be, so there's going to be a drill that's taking up some samples and seeing if there's water in there. And they basically said, well, what else can we do with it? We wanted to see what other resource experiments we could possibly do. And it kind of perked my interest, because I knew that this wasn't being done anywhere else. And also I could contribute to an actual experiment that was guaranteed to be going to the moon. So that was just like, sure, let's see what we can do with this. So when I went to conferences at the start of my PhD, I was definitely getting comments from people being like, why is this important? Okay, this is a bit of a joke. Because it had been done before, and I didn't even know this, but at the time, but in the US, when it had been studied, it was funded and then it was dropped, and then it was funded and then it was dropped. So it's kind of seen as this thing that never really got anywhere. but then it's just exploded in the last 4 years. And I definitely feel like I'm in the right place at the right time, because now there's been more and more projects coming in the UK in multiple different institutions in the fields of geology and engineering and physics. So lots of different fields of interest there. But it's still so new that it's really hard to find where it sits. So I don't really know, am I a scientist? Am I an engineer? Sometimes I'm a geologist and sometimes I'm a chemist.
You could say you're a person of all trades?
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. There you go.
Yeah. So that's been interesting, kind of like finding my feet in that world. But what's really cool about like this mission is that this instrument is hopefully now we're going to be doing the two types of finding and making water. So we've got the original concept, which was searching for this water vapor or water ice and then heating it up to collect the vapor. And then what I was doing, which was using this chemical reaction. So we've got some hydrogen on board. So we're literally going to inject it in to the soil, heat it up to really high temperatures to about 900 degrees, and then or 1,000 degrees, and then water pops out, and then we trap it. So that's the plan. So we could be like the first making of water on the moon, which would be so cool.
No, I think that'd be really cool. And it's very interesting that, as you said, in the United States, that so many missions and projects were funded, but then canceled very last minute. I remember that when the Lunar Prospector rover was in design, because they wanted to finally send a little robot to go to the moon and prove that we could find water ice and get this material. I can't remember the reason why, but the funding was just dropped very last minute before it was going to get launched. And I remember when we did that internship together, we got to see it, but then we heard the sad story that the entire team were distraught when they were told, like, yeah, thank you for building the rover, but unfortunately we're not going to be sending it to the moon. So. Yeah,
I think what I know about it is that they've taken like aspects of it and integrated it into new rover designs, but it's kind of like Resource Prospector Mark II. And from what I understand, one of the difficulties as an outsider, I don't fully understand, the processes going on. But with each new administration, the different priorities change, and that means every 4 years, funding can chop and change, and focus areas can come and go. And that's I can imagine that has its frustrations. I'm working on the ESA side of things, being British. And it's not a perfect system either. There are definitely other flaws, but it does feel like, if something's been funded, then it will keep being funded until it would never get stopped because of politics anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes when it comes to science and politics, that they need to communicate with each other, but they shouldn't try to meddle in each other's work, because it does delay both ends, I feel. Yeah. And then it just causes a lot of conflicts and confusion, especially when it goes through media, I would say.
Especially, and I find because of the nature of space exploration and space missions in general, they are really long-term things. It can take decades to go from a concept to actually seeing something fly and take data. So a lot of things can happen in that time, and you kind of need some sort of stability to enable those things to happen, and some sort of support. So if your funding will change every 4 years, that's not ideal.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that I know that since now we know all these missions that are going to be going to the moon to look for all these resources are a definite thing. I don't see any reason for them to suddenly be cancelled last minute, or especially as you said, the ESA side. So, and since your project will be more involved on that end, I think we're definitely going to see your laboratory apparatus get sent off.
So my worst nightmare, and it's all I think about. Oh, no, it's not all I think about. But my only concern is, everyone, because I was just a mere student in all of this. We've got teams who've been working on this for years and developing the hardware and everything. But missions fail, like things blow up on the launch pad, and the idea of working for however many years on an idea and then watching it just explode just terrifies me. But it happens.
Yeah, I guess that is the one risk of space exploration, that there's so many complications and things to think about, that one thing could go wrong, and it could be either a delay or maybe the end of years of work. But I have a lot of fingers crossed and high hopes that it will get there in
Yeah,
one
me
piece.
too.
Yeah. So for the audience, you have a very strong background in outreach and science communication. And I'm guessing, like you said, when you went to conferences, people said like, "Oh, that's a very wacky research topic," or "Why are we going to care if this water, if we can get water off the moon?" I imagine when you probably take your work to schools, public events, that you must get maybe similar questions for everyone else asking, like, "Why are we building a machine to get water on the moon when we should be figuring out how to maybe find water in other locations on Earth?" So how do you? Is that like something you come across quite a lot?
I wouldn't say I come across it a lot, but it does happen, and it has happened a few times. Generally, one of the good things about working in space is that generally everyone finds it interesting, everyone's excited by it, because it's just kind of this, it's so out there, literally. But when I talk about the idea of using resources on the moon, you have to be quite tactical with, well, not tactical, but careful with the words that you use. Because talking about mining has quite negative connotations. And, you know, we see the moon as this pristine place that we haven't yet, you know, inhabited or damaged. And the idea of going up and mining just sounds quite harsh, and that we might, you know, ruin the moon. And it is hard to explain sometimes because it can enable so many wonderful things, and we're not talking about, you know, creating huge Grand Canyon craters to harvest resources or anything. We're talking relatively small amounts of things going on here. The moon won't look any different to you here on Earth as it already does, if we start, you know, searching for resources and so on. I see it as the next step in space exploration for humankind, but I also have quite a, I won't say a naive view, because I know that an idealistic view of people involved in the space sector generally have been, you know, NASA, ESA, and so on, and whose goals are peaceful and for the pursuit of knowledge. Whereas now, what concerns me more is commercial sector being so heavily involved, and them not being accountable to the taxpayer and other people who insist on a certain level of behavior in space. I'm worried that people are just going to go in and do things for profit, especially when it comes to mining. You know, if the commercial industry gets involved, then they can just do what they want as long as it brings a profit. Whereas I see what we do as in terms of space resources as something that supports further exploration and like pursuit of knowledge. It's enabling that, not extra money and greed.
Yeah, I think that having the private sector and commercial companies being more involved does have its pros and cons. I think you've highlighted the cons quite well, that they have less restrictions and more freedom to do what they need, what they want to do, and what they believe they need to do to get profit. But at the same time, I think it's what a lot of people forget, that since those companies are getting more involved in space exploration, it's actually opened up more jobs for other people, because especially if you're like maybe normal mining companies who can't do any works right now can like transfer over to these like space-based companies, or like new early career scientists, engineers, and even people in business are starting to get more involved in what they believe in the future could be like an independent space economy, which would bring it.
Yeah, it's opening it up. It's not just like this elite, you know, thing for just the scientists and the engineers. It's for everyone. And also, by opening it up to the space sector now, NASA can just pay for a seat on a private rocket rather than having to build the rocket. And now they can spend their money on other things which are more science focused or exploration focused, and don't have to worry about building the hardware of these rockets that these other companies are now doing. And then, you know, they're building the landers, and now we can just pay for a seat instead. So it's actually enabling many more things. Yeah, I think I'm just scared of like individuals going rogue more so than anyone else. I'm not saying, you know, they should. The commercial sector isn't welcome, It's just that I just don't want certain agendas ruining the beauty of space.
Yeah, hopefully we don't see any of those like cliche movies where you have like someone, the head of a business corporation, wanting to strip a planet. I don't know why I keep thinking of Avatar. Just brings me back to that. Let's like remove that giant sacred tree to mine a very rare mineral that we could get somewhere else, but we're gonna just mine it here though. So
yeah, that is terrifying. But I mean, there's the good part of human nature, which is our desire to know our place in the universe, and then there's the bad side of human nature, which is the selfish, indulgent side.
Yeah, but it is very fascinating to think about that. It all started to satellites and on telescopes on Earth detecting traces of the molecular water on the moon has like sparked this new generation of companies, initiatives, projects, space missions, and not just and unlike the Apollo mission era, it's gotten a lot more people involved because I think of Apollo, it mainly focused on giving all the money to NASA and then the few companies that did contribute to those missions. But now it seems like everyone is wanting, not just trying to get involved, but wants to get involved because now that I think they're starting to see more of the potential and what we could see and what space can actually bring back because it's bringing jobs, it's opening up new projects, new technology that even though I think it's designed specifically for a mission, has a use back on Earth, especially when it comes to designing new crew modules for astronauts, because something that can make their lives easier, but could definitely help make our lives easier back on Earth, I would say.
Yeah, and I really like that it isn't again limited by nations. So many more nations are involved in space exploration now, even like some really small countries, and I think that's really exciting because you don't want a dominance. You don't want someone dominating things. You want someone, you want everyone to be able to work collectively in space as well, safely, hopefully.
Yeah. So when it came from your space journey, starting all the way back from looking at that space shuttle launch, all the way to potentially drinking first water from the moon, finding ways to get water off of the moon, so we no longer be reliant on resources on Earth. And then you managed to get into the world of outreach and science communication to share the passion that you have for space exploration and to show everyone like why all this cool work is being done in the first place. I'd say, what is it that really drew you into science communication?
So I've always liked teaching. Even like when I was a kid, I loved coaching the kids at my athletics. So I was an athlete and then I would be coaching the kids as well. And I really enjoyed that. And after my undergraduate degree, I then thought, well, I like teaching, I'll go and be a teacher. And I did enjoy it, but I missed the university. I also missed like figuring things out. I wasn't ready to just stop there. I felt like I had more to do. So it was nice that I was able to use the skills that I learned in that period of time with my research. So now I get to do the best part of teaching, which is going into the schools and talking about the really exciting topics and then leaving again. And I don't have any of the paperwork or any of the bad students. Or if I do have bad students, I'm not afraid to tell them to shush, because sometimes I find that people don't like going into schools and telling the naughty kids off, but if they're going to talk over me, they'll feel my wrath. But it means I get to do the best part of teaching, and so I'll always going and doing all these talks and think it's kind of like the bonus part of the job. And as well, like, their excitement reminds me why I'm excited about what I do, so I find it like it makes me more excited to do my job, because when they're excited about my job, I'm like, oh yeah, I do. Yeah, this is fun, isn't it? Yeah, I should do more of this.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Like when I used to visit schools, this is pre-COVID, went to schools to talk about space exploration. I mean, I have a passion for planetary volcanism and looking at lava flows on the moon and Mars. So I think one of the main questions I always get is like, wait, there's lava on the moon? It's like, yeah, we call it mare, which just means a sea of lava that's everywhere, but it's much older than what we see on the surface of our planet. So, and then it gets into questions of like, well, how can we look at it? And then I get into talking about satellites, and I I think I could definitely share your enthusiasm for when it comes to teaching. That I think it's just seeing their faces when they get to learn something that they didn't know before and get excited about it. I think just makes your day, and reminds you why it is that you want to talk more about your work in general.
Absolutely. There was one experience that I really remember. I was working with some kids in London, and I was speaking to some of the parents while the kids were. It was on a weekend. I was speaking to some of the parents, and we got chatting. And this guy, it turns out he grew up where I grew up, and we grew up in this small village in the middle of England. You know, and most people who grow up there, kind of a lot of the time, they stay there and they're quite happy and everything's great. But the idea of working in space just was not an option. And when we were chatting, he kind of like blew his mind that, oh, hold on, people like us can go and do those sorts of things. Because then he was like, well, then if you can do that, then I can tell my kid that they can do that as well. And kind of realizing that the options for your child were not limited as much as you think they are. Like there's so much out there that we just didn't realize. And that's what makes me want to go into schools and tell kids what they can do, because I kind of feel like I fell into it a little bit. Like I love space, but I never thought I was going to have a career, and somehow I ended up with one. And now I want to go in and tell kids, no, you can do this. You can focus on this if you want to, and make it happen. You don't have to limit your aspirations if you don't want to.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very good advice. That even though it's something that you want to do seems very, I guess, like either very challenging, seems very like far in the future, or maybe you tell yourself like, oh, that looks really cool, but I don't think I could do that. I think it's like, no, you definitely can, because like especially when you visit schools, you show like it is possible to have these careers. You just have to be able to work towards it, and then one day you'll realize, you know what, I can actually do this, and then I can get to the dream career that I've always wanted. So
yeah, and I find actually like I didn't know that I wanted this, like this is my dream career, but I didn't know it was my dream career. And you know, so if someone asked me what I wanted to do when I was 10, I don't think I really would have been able to answer that properly, or if I did, it's certainly not what I want now. And I think it's just, you know, just don't limit yourself, and just because you might not end up doing that job, but you could end up doing anything. You never know, and the route that you end up taking is, you know, I couldn't tell someone this is the path you need to take, because it's different for every person. But yeah, it doesn't matter what you do or how you get there. Just don't tell yourself that you can't.
yeah, I think that we should always try to be not unrealistic, but it's good to always have a little bit of optimism. Be very optimistic, be enthusiastic, because if you don't have any of that, then you're not going to be able to push yourself to get to where you want to be. Or maybe you'll one day find out that the dream career that you want is not what you had a feeling it'd be, but maybe it wasn't what you expected it to be. So
yeah, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever you do, I remember my mum always said, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're happy. And that was really important to me, and I think that's why I ended up going out of teaching, because I wasn't completely fulfilled, and I thought, yeah, I want to do more, so took the risk and went for it.
Well, I think you definitely found a very good spot in space exploration, because for everyone in the audience who cannot see this, in Hannah's background, she has quite a lot of space-themed, especially moon-themed gizmos and posters, because I think you've got a very nice Lego Saturn V rocket and the Apollo lander, so we could have a feeling what her favorite spacecrafts definitely are.
Yeah, I was definitely swayed. I mean, my PhD has definitely swayed me to absolutely love the moon. I kind of love the fact that you can see it. You know, a lot of stuff in space you can't see, even like Mars. Okay, it just looks like another star, just slightly redder to the naked eye. So I kind of like that I can literally see the moon, and then I'm kind of thinking, oh, that could be something I've worked on, could be there one day. That's so cool.
I just thought that I think what you need to add to your Lego collection will probably be a Lego space shuttle, because then you could link it back. Oh, so actually you do have one?
I know, I feel so bad. Everyone keeps buying me Legos for my birthday and Christmas, so I have an insane collection.
Well, everyone, she actually probably has every single Lego rocket that we could probably think of. So, so
Yeah,
definitely
stop. Lego have got their money's worth from my friends and family.
see, we're not just people that like to work nonstop. We do like to build what we study at the same time.
Yeah, we're all children.
Yeah, we're always children at heart, no matter how old we get. So with your entry into the which would be the first entry into the Space Explorer's diary, and it's still going to be ongoing. So because with your career continuing with Lunar Resources, there's something, since this is the first episode, there's something I'm going to be including at the end, is to ask all my guests 3 questions about space exploration, and they're a little bit fun just to get everyone's opinion on different things. So I know the first one I wanted to ask was, in the future, what celestial body would you want a mission to visit?
So it's kind of unrelated to what I do, but I really would love to see images from a subsurface ocean on like an icy moon of Enceladus, like Enceladus, which is around Saturn. So there are some icy moons that they have like a crust of ice, but beneath them they have, we think, liquid water, and it's able to be in that way because there's a little bit of heating because of basically other things that we don't need to get into. But there's this idea that maybe there's life there, maybe there's organisms that are growing in this ocean, and the idea of just something being underneath there, taking a picture, and God knows what we might find, but that is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's always, because every time we think about when it comes to searching for life extinct or potentially still alive, which will probably be microbial, we always think about Mars because that's where a lot of the focus goes to. But I do feel like the icy moons of Saturn don't get as much credit as they deserve, because just thinking about subsurface ocean is cool enough, that an ocean beneath the ground. Like, even trying to pitch that now, I mean, we hear about underground lakes on Earth, but we're thinking of an ocean. So, and if there is life, you're just trying to picture what it would look like. It'll probably be those very weird, glowy, exotic creatures that you see in movies.
I remember being as a kid, I went to like some science museum, and they had one of these like 10-minute films in like an IMAX or some one of the planetarium domes or something, and it was imagining what a mission to a subsurface ocean would be, and then these creatures flying up in front of it. And I remember thinking, that's mad. I'm like, actually, we have no idea. It could totally be true. We don't know.
That's true. Until we can get a mission there, which I do think we have the Europa Clipper mission.
Yes.
Which has been confirmed it will be going. It's probably not going to be till, I can't remember the exact year, but we've still got quite a few years before it's supposed to be launched. But if everyone follows the Europa Clipper, you'll be able to find out one day in the future what type of, what's the structure of the moon Europa, and if there is life underneath in that subsurface ocean. So the second question is, kind of linking back to the theme of this podcast, trying to demonstrate why space exploration has benefited people back on Earth. So I wanted to ask of what your favorite, or what you believe is the most interesting spin-off technology that's come from space exploration.
So I went and did some research to see what's, and there's so much. There are so many things that have kind of been created as a result of space technology. And I went for one that is that I've personally benefited from, which was LASIK technology in terms of laser eye surgery. And that's because in space they wanted to test the astronauts' eyes and scan and basically monitor the astronauts' eyes as they are in weightlessness, and basically monitoring them and making sure that everything's okay. And they use that tracking technology in LASIK surgery to make sure everything's being done accurately and everything's fine and safe. And as a result of that, I don't have to wear glasses, and contacts were a nightmare, and I hated wearing glasses. So now I get to live this glasses-free life with my kind of fixed eyes. So yeah, LASIK technology is one that I've personally benefited from greatly, and I'm sure many others have.
So you're saying because of space, a lot of people are now able to see a lot clearer.
Yeah, absolutely. Space has opened our eyes for us.
Quite literally.
Literally, yeah.
So, and the final one, which I think, since we've talked about everyone's inspiration of getting into space exploration, so who is your favorite space explorer?
Oh, there's so many. There are so many.
There must be one that just comes to the top of your head.
I mean, so I had a couple. So there's one that I do really like, and that, so there's a woman called Poppy Northcutt, and she was originally called a computress back in the day, and then ended up being an engineer, I think, for the technical team or something, an engineering technical team for the Apollo era, and she was the first woman at mission control, and that was for Apollo 8. And she's so badass. She then went on to become an attorney, I believe, in specialising in women's rights and ensuring their access to reproductive health. And she's still a campaigner to this day. And she's very active on Twitter if you want to follow her, Poppy Northcutt. So that's kind of one that I really like. But then there's one more that I really wanted to mention. It's a little bit morbid, but it's a story I remember from years ago. It's a guy called Vladimir Komarov, I believe. So he was a Soviet cosmonaut, again back in the 60s, and he was a cosmonaut alongside Yuri Gagarin, first man in space. And Gagarin's flight was early in the 60s, and later on there were some other missions, and there was something called Soyuz 1, so it's the beginning of like the Soyuz era of missions, which was going to be taking Russians to the moon. And the cosmonauts were really not happy because they knew there were loads of things wrong with the mission, with the hardware, but because of politics and Russia and the space race, I guess, wanting to get humans into space and to the moon, things were pushed through, and Komarov insisted that he was the guy to fly and not Gagarin, because he knew that Gagarin was this hero, and if he went, he was going to die, and that's not okay. So Komarov was like, I'll go, I know that I'm a dead man, but make sure that things change, basically. And inevitably he did end up like dying on re-entry and crashing into the ground. There was 1,000,001 things that went wrong, and basically saved Gagarin's life. And I it's always stuck with me, his story, that he was at peace knowing what he was about to do, and it kind of changed quite a lot of how things were done in Russia to make sure ensure astronaut safety, and basically highlighting, no, this isn't guaranteed to work, so take care of us, kind of thing.
It's a very morbid story, but I could definitely see how it can show just admiration of thinking, I don't want you to die for the impact it's going to have, so I will take the seat, even though I know this is going to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, and it's kind of like highlighting the risks of space. It might seem like things are so easy these days because we've not seen a disaster in space for quite, luckily, for a very long time. And to be honest, that surprises me because it is so hazardous in reality. So the fact that we've gone so far without people losing their lives I think is really impressive and something to be commended. But what they do is still very risky, and it's a reason why I would never be the first one to try a new rocket or be the first one to do anything in space, because I'm not that kind of risk taker.
Yeah, you have to give a lot of respect to astronauts who are willing to be on a rocket that may have passed all of its initial tests, but it's never been tested with people in a cockpit before. So there's a lot of admiration to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So Hannah, I wanted to thank you for coming on to the show, and I hope everyone gets to learn or gets inspired a lot about your journey from looking at one shuttle launch all the way to extracting water from the moon.
No, thank you very much for having me. I hope people don't mind us just babbling on, or me just babbling on about my life. But like you say, it's kind of hopefully refreshing to see a more relaxed side to those building things in space.
I hope so as well. So we'll be seeing you guys very soon. Thank you again, Dr. Hannah Sargeant, for coming on to the Diaries of Space Explorers. We have been speaking with Dr. Hannah Sargeant from the Open University. If you would like to follow her work, you can find her on Twitter at Dr_Hannah_Sarge. We have now filled out the official first entry of the Space Explorer's Diary. If you'd like to learn more about our episodes or want to come on as a guest, you can follow us on Twitter at Diaries of Space, or on Instagram at Diaries of Space Explorers. I've been your host, Gavin Tolometti, and this has been the Diaries of Space Explorers.